On today's coffee break, Tim's origin story. We're going to be talking with Tim Steinke, who's been working with us now for about 3.5 years. And we've previously done origin stories for Nick and for me and for Carrie, but we haven't yet until now gotten to Tim or to Stephen. And we're correcting one of those two problems right now. Welcome,
Yeah,
Tim.
I'm
Thank you.
excited
Happy
about
to be
this.
with you
Yeah,
both.
good to have you here. I mean, I don't know a lot about how you got started in miles and points, Tim. I have a good sense of where you've been these last couple of years, but I don't really know where you were before all that. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about how you got started. I mean, how did you dive into miles and points to begin with?
Yeah, it's a murky and mysterious background, let me tell you. And there's a lot of, I'm going to have to change some names and some dates because we can't report it all completely truthfully.
Keep the
But
secret safe.
yeah, this is so, just so you know. Yeah, so I mean, for me, points and miles, I think going further would be, or going even further back, points and miles are kind of the drug that allows me to get high on my own supply. Because I love what I love is travel. I mean, and I love points and miles. I love what can happen, but really where points and miles, how points and miles, like the gateway into points and miles was travel. And I grew up in the middle of the U.S. in a state called Nebraska, which many people don't actually realize is in the U.S., especially Californians.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I actually one
Never
time
once.
A guy in California, I was bartending in California, and a guy said, he's like, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Well, Nebraska." And he's like, "Oh, you're Canadian."
Close
Well,
enough.
yeah, close enough. I mean, almost. But so I literally, until I was 16, 17 years old, I had never left the Midwest or Florida. I had been to Florida, I had been to the Midwest. So about that time, when I was 16, 17 years old, my brother and I, who was 4 years older than me, started doing a summer road trips where we effectively carved the United States into four quarters and said, let's do a road trip and explore the whole thing each summer. Fortunately, we only got through half of it, so we never quite. I guess who knows what will happen going on, but he has three kids now, so it's a different story. But
Did you
so
get through
anyway,
the right
I had
half?
I'm sorry.
Did you get through the right half?
I did, yes. So,
Well, wait. Which quadrants did you complete?
so the first quadrant that we completed was the Northwest. So I now live in
Mhm.
the Seattle area, and the first time that we actually encountered the Seattle, this would have been about 1995. So grunge was in full effect. And actually, it's really funny. To kind of chronicle our trips, we thought it would be that all of our friends and family would love to watch a video. Because of course, who would not want to watch hours and hours of video of somebody else just walking around cities, right? But this
Yeah,
was all. So, but
way
at
back
that,
when people used to inflict slideshows on
I know
on
totally.
people.
This was, and so now it was like, well, it's all in motion. People are of course going to like
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
But at that point, there wasn't so, we didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have, internet was in its infancy. So we had rented one of these shoulder-mounted video cameras and decided we were going to take the shoulder mounted video. But whenever we were in a
wow,
city, we felt horribly sheepish about walking around with this huge video camera. So my
sure.
brother would hold it by his side and then try and point it at things that he was trying. So
I
we
bet that
took
made
a,
for some fantastic footage.
I know. So we took
Riveting.
what already was pretty boring. So I still have this video of like 2 hours of us walking around Pike Place Market with him like trying to point this video, bouncing around and all of these. Oh, it's
And this
hilarious.
was pre-HD as well,
Oh,
so it's
totally. Yeah, this
grainy.
was
It's
totally. And one person watched that entire video nonstop or all the way from beginning to end, and that was our mom. Her
only
whole friends
person who
couldn't
would be
even make it
willing to
through.
do
Like
that.
our wives
That
haven't
makes
even seen
sense.
the whole thing. But so yeah, so we started with the Northwest, then we did the Southwest, and we were planning on doing Alaska, but then stuff happened in each of our lives, so we ended up kind of putting that on hold, and we never picked it back up again. But I'll never forget, I had never even seen the mountains, and so we drove into Yellowstone at night, and I just couldn't see a thing. Woke up the next morning and we're driving in, and I'm just like looking outside the car windows. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is
Yeah,
incredible. And ever since then, I couldn't get enough. Like, I mean,
yeah,
there was just
yeah.
like, whoa, this is a big world, and I'm only 10 hours from my house, you know.
Right.
That
Um,
sounds just like
And
my story. The first time we went to Zion National Park, it was at night. It was pouring rain, so we couldn't see anything when we were coming in, and we stayed in one of the cabins there. And in the morning, we come out, and we're like, "Whoa!" It
what
was
is this?
just mind
Uh,
blowing how beautiful it
well,
was. Yeah.
and I have a pretty clear picture of what that must have felt like for you, Tim, because while I joked about having only flown over Nebraska before, when I was 21, I went to Las Vegas for the first time and I took the bus back. And so I got to cross Nebraska in a bus. And I can imagine
I'm sorry.
what it must have been like ending
Wow.
up in
Yeah,
the mountains after having spent some time. In fact,
yeah.
long story, but I got stuck for hours in Ogallala, Nebraska, actually, on that bus trip.
Oh
So
yeah.
I will remember the cornfield across from that gas station for a long time. So I can imagine the mountains must have been a surprise.
Yeah, that's not a part of Nebraska that's known for its tourist attractions. So unlike the rest of Nebraska, which is, and I always feel bad for people that had to do what you did, Nick, because Nebraska, there are some really pretty areas in Nebraska, but the interstate does not cross any of
Not
them.
along the
And
interstate,
so
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you end up it's a rough thing. Um, but yeah, so anyway, that was sort of how I got into the travel thing. And then when we got married, when my wife and I got married, not my brother and I, by that point I had been on several international trips. I'd been to Europe, I'd been to Asia, and I knew that one of the things I knew is that we had to go all out for the honeymoon. So luckily we had a medical research facility in Lincoln, next to college campuses called Harris Labs. I think they still exist, and they're all next to college campuses because they know, who needs money and is willing to sell their body for research. And that was me at the time. So I did probably 5 or 6 different medical research studies where they would, inject you with things and then draw your blood and see how it was interacting with your body. And I saved up money for our honeymoon. Uh, and so my wife and I had always, like, we and my girlfriend at the time, we had talked about places we'd like to go and we'd like to visit. And so we had kind of a general top 10 list. And so my goal was that I wanted to take her to all her entire top five for our honeymoon.
Oh,
Unfortunately, her entire top five was all around the world. It was New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, France, or Paris specifically, and Ireland. So there wasn't a real easy way of, combine that all into one. So we effectively did around the world in 100 days. It was actually 103 days. We got married in Hawaii. That's where her mom's side of the family is all from. And then they did around the world ticket. And it took probably, I don't know, 3, 4 months planning it. At that point, I did have the internet, but nobody had online booking. So I was, up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning calling bed and breakfasts in, Australia and South Africa. And that's when I first like really started digging into the what used to be my favorite guidebooks in the world, Lonely Planets. And I just started, and that was how I did my research. So it wasn't just about researching these places. It was like, well, where could we go that's right near these places? And so I was just reading guidebooks for like an entire winter in Nebraska. Um, and just had a blast. And we just had a blast on that trip. And I'll never forget getting, at that point, they issued paper tickets. So I got this, when I finally got each ticket, it was just this stack of boarding cards, this stack of tickets. And I was like flipping through it and then, oh, this just looks like adventure right here.
yeah.
But so during that time, because we were on our honeymoon, that was our first time we got upgraded to, we were allowed to go into a lounge. It was the Air New Zealand lounge in Honolulu because they found out they're on a honeymoon. So they put us in the lounge. And we got for Singapore, when we were on Singapore Airlines, they actually baked us a cake and brought our cake back to our
Awesome.
seats because we got upgraded a couple times. And so I was like, well, how do I get more of this? And at the same point, because we were it was all Star Alliance carriers, we had a bunch of United miles by the end of it. And I had no idea what to do with those things. I had no
Yeah.
idea. There was not an easy way. This was back in the day where, there wasn't a real easy way of figuring out or even making these redemptions. So right afterwards, we
So
moved.
let me just pause you there, Tim, because I have to point out that I love this, that your origin story, a lot like Peter Parker's, involves medical research laboratory, right?
Yep.
So we don't know what superpowers you got out of it, but
Neither do I.
it was part of the genesis of where you are today.
Totally. Well, I would say that, what the nice thing about doing those medical research is because I have that sixth finger on my left hand, I can type way faster.
Way faster. I mean, that's
So
great.
yeah, I
Love
mean,
it.
it's really incredible what it does for you. So Yeah, that was an unforeseen benefit. Yeah, I never, and it is sort of, I kind of sometimes idly wonder, what did I do to myself during
Right.
those 6 or 7 medical research studies? But thus far, it doesn't seem like anything terrible happened.
It certainly makes whatever you do to earn miles and points by nowadays kind of pale
Oh
in
yeah,
comparison, right? I mean,
oh yeah, my
you're like,
gosh,
oh, what? I
what
gotta go
what I had to
spend
do for
some.
$1,500 in
Right,
travel back then was crazy. The kids did
right.
today, they don't know. They don't know what we had to go through. But yeah, so anyway, coming out of that honeymoon, we both had a stash of United miles that we had acquired from just traveling around the world. And I didn't know how to use them. So I called in to United and right after we got back from our honeymoon, we moved out to Montana and we lived in Montana for several years. And I was going home for the holidays. And so I was like, well, I wonder if these miles will like get me a discount on something. And I called up, United, and I said, "Hey, what can I do with these? Can I get back to? I mean, want to go back to Nebraska for the holidays?" And they're like, "Well, you have enough miles, you can actually get a free ticket." Like, no ticket all the way back to Omaha. So my first frequent
Love it.
flyer, my World Travel Rewards redemption was an economy flight from Missoula, Montana to Omaha, Nebraska. And wouldn't you know it, United stuck us in the Denver airport overnight because of an equipment failure.
Oh
So in
no.
between, we had to we got in with a $15 voucher for the food court there, and we spent the night in the Denver airport. So, but I was still thrilled. I like the idea that free travel. I mean, what's better than travel? Free travel. You know.
Sure.
Right, right. Yeah,
So,
that's pretty awesome. Do you remember how many? Silly question. Do you remember how many
oh
miles
no,
it was? No, yeah,
I
I'm just
don't. I'm
curious.
assuming it must have been at least 12,000 a piece or 12,500 a piece because at that point, that's what domestic
Right.
awards cost on United. I
Right.
do remember that's what the ticket cost. It was 12,500 miles.
Yeah.
Nice.
But I don't remember
Yeah.
exactly what. And and
Yeah.
honestly, and I'm assuming that at some point that after that first redemption, I probably lost whatever other miles I had because I didn't know that might be
Right.
able to use those again,
Yeah.
or that
Yeah.
there was more there. But I mean, at the time, it just, I mean,
Yeah.
it felt like an adrenaline shot to the veins. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
3 flights?
That's awesome. Love it.
No.
Okay,
So,
so now you're interested, or you have some
no, so
interest at this point,
totally.
but how'd you get from that to, oh, this is a great opportunity to earn, how'd you find out that you don't have to actually travel around the world on paid tickets in order to earn miles?
You don't need the
Yeah,
research studies. How'd you get to that point where you gave up the
yeah.
research studies?
Yeah, luckily, yeah, that was I'm thankful I discovered that. So we ended up my wife got her master's in California, and while we were in California, I'm pretty sure that's when I got my first credit card, and it was Southwest. And Southwest was incredibly valuable at that point in California because there were so many interstate flights. And we hadn't spent much time in California. So while she was doing her master's, like every weekend we were going somewhere in California, just exploring the whole state and had a blast. And oftentimes when we were going to Southern California, we were flying. So at that point, without even knowing what I was doing, I started figuring like, oh wait, if I open this card and get the welcome bonus, and then Erin opens this card and she gets a welcome bonus, and then I open another card and I get the welcome bonus, we can really get a lot of free travel off of this thing. And so, the companion pass was I had no idea that even existed. Maybe it didn't at the point because that was, when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But so we started using credit cards in that way. But we were effectively just, one credit card family, just rotating Southwest cards, and that's all we did. But then later, once we moved up to Washington, and I got a winemaking degree and got involved in the wine industry. And I started traveling for work at that point because I was both making and selling wine. And that was when, because I was traveling all the time, I'm like, I need to start maximizing this. It's not just about, and probably right around that time, so around like 2010-ish, 9-ish was when I first started reading points and miles blogs. And there weren't very many at that point. I mean, it was, I don't, because Greg, you started in 2014, right? 13,
2011, actually.
2011.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember reading Frequent Miler, but it was probably around that time, like 12, 13,
Hmm.
14, somewhere in
Sure.
there. And I remember thinking at that point, being a little turned off by the graphics. So thank God Carrie Yoder exists. Like, well, this is interesting, but gosh, the graphics.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but so but so part of traveling, I just started learning, working how to maximize it and reading it, started reading blogs and uh, discovering that, man, there's this whole world out here. What I could started buying, learned about Staples and Office Depot and things that you could do with the Chase Ink card and get, or with the blank bank, or bank that cannot be named ink card, earning 5x rewards at office stores. And I mean, it was at that point, that's when the gamer in me started to come out. It's like, wow, not only can you get free travel, there's all of these ways to get more and more and more free travel. And then the moment that the trip that just hooked me specific, like hook, line, and sinker, was the company that I worked for was starting to make a wine in South Africa. So they were doing and their family owned a kind of this couple luxury tourism lodges in South Africa. So they were bringing the whole team down to South Africa. We were going to spend some time in these lodges, and then we were going to, go to the winery and do work. Um, but so they said, we're going to pay for all, while you're in country, we'll pay for everything, but you need to get there. Like, man, South Africa is a long ways away. If anybody has not flown to South Africa before, it's a long ways away. And I'm really big. I'm 6'3". At that point I had a hip, but now I have a new hip there. But I had a bad back and a hip, and I cannot sleep a wink in economy flights. I mean, not a wink. It doesn't matter how tired I am. It doesn't matter if I have race business class where you have the whole row to yourself. Cannot sleep. So I'm looking at this. I'm like, I'm going to be wasted for the first week that I'm there, or not, probably not week, but the first several days that I'm there. And then I started looking at business class, and I'm like, wow, I actually have enough miles for Alaska miles for Qatar business class. And so I booked a flight. But my first business class flight ever was from DFW to Doha, and then I had an overnight in Doha and Doha to Johannesburg, the whole thing in business class. And it was the old Qatar 777s where it's 222 seating.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even like, this is not like even top of the line stuff. But
Sure.
that first time turning left and then sitting down in that seat, and like the other side of the other seat was like several feet in front of me. Like,
Yeah.
whoa, I'm literally,
Yeah.
sitting there. Everybody else is sitting down and getting their stuff, and I'm like moving the seat down and moving it back up and moving it down. Like, this is incredible. And I slept on the flight, and I wasn't in pain the next, when I woke up in Doha. And just this whole travel experience was incredible. And it's like, oh my gosh, now I can actually travel internationally and not like pay for it. I
Yeah.
mean, like I mean, it just like, it, in terms of how that opened the world and the types of trips that it opened up. Like going to Europe for a week now is not like, oh, I have to spend the first 2 or 3 days recovering from my flight, and then I'm leaving in another 3 days. So that's when it really kicked into high gear, and that's when I really started getting into frequent miler too, because that's when Greg was really doing a bunch of fun stuff with accumulating points and miles that a lot of other people weren't talking about at the time. And that's when my wife and my travel just kicked into high gear. Like, we started traveling more internationally. We started seeing much more of the world. We started, her spring breaks were all of a sudden fair game for Southeast Asia,
Uh,
like stuff that we just wouldn't have thought about. Like 10
yeah.
days, you're not going to go to Southeast Asia for 10 days. Well, let's go to Southeast Asia for 10 days. Why don't we? That sounds like fun. And so, I mean, and so again, like with the idea that points and miles allow me to travel, that really the end game for me is travel. Now I'm really hooked, because I can go all over the world in a manner of just like, I mean, what that enabled me to do in terms of worldwide travel was just amazing. And we're not, it's all funny money.
Right.
I kept like looking around. I'm like, is somebody gonna catch me? Like, like, is this legal what I'm doing?
So
Uh,
presumably then you got better and better, not just at earning the points and miles, but at redeeming them as well,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Because you were getting real world experience all the time.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And
Nice.
and I was starting to travel internationally for work as well. Unfortunately, I never I always had to purchase economy, but so I started getting better at purchasing economy fares that I could upgrade using my own miles. American at that point was really good, so I'd fly a lot on American and credit to
Hmm.
Alaska. That's when I first became an Alaska elite member, and then started realizing, well, I'm getting I'm like getting upgraded everywhere I go. Every time I go to Cincinnati, I'm getting upgraded. This is incredible. And so yeah, and so all the redemption started. I mean, and actually, I remember a fun one, and I'll talk about this now, but because I actually talked about this at the Frequent Miler interview, but I don't think it's possible anymore. So if I'm spilling beans that shouldn't be spilled, I'm sorry, and let's edit this out later, so we're not evil deal killers. But the first time we went to the Maldives, or the only time that when we went to the Maldives, we stayed at the Commonrad Rongali Island, and which is a great property, and we just had a blast. We loved it there. A week was too short for us, but the whole time I was, and this is probably, I don't know, 2016 or 17. The whole time I was reading Flyer Talk and trying to figure out, how do we angle the upgrades? Which particular places should we stay? Because there's like, I mean, there's volumes of information on that property and a lot of these Maldives properties, especially that. And there were some people that like they go there like 3, 4 times a year. Like, who are these people? Like, are they like, is this like a Russian oligarch that, is on Flyer Talk? Like, talking about like, oh yeah, we were here for 2 weeks. And they would, and there was some sort of like side mentions about, yeah, it's cheaper than you might think. Or it ends up being cheaper than you might think, and people would kind of shush them up. And then after we stayed there, I found out, I don't even remember what I probably used a couple free night certs, and it was probably like I did a fifth night free on points, and then did add it on to free night certificates is what I'm guessing we did. But so it probably would have been, I don't know, it was probably 95K at the time, so I'm assuming it was like 380 for the whole stay plus the free night certificates. And then we spent probably about $2,500 in, food and flights and stuff like that. And so but then when I got home, all of a sudden I earned somewhere around 220,000 points for the stay. Like, wait a minute, how did I? And then digging into some other people or talking with some other people, evidently they were processing point stays at the cash value, or at least, and I don't know if I still don't know if this was all the time, if just some people, but that's how some
Yeah.
people were able to go over and over again. And I don't think that's happening anymore, which is why I'm talking about it now. But so at that point, I'm like, there's got to be other deals like this. So then I got really, now I have never found another deal like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
that's the
it's
thing,
like,
you find one of those crazy things and that seems unlikely to happen twice. But at the same
totally,
time, the
you
fact that
never
it
know.
happens, you never know. Yeah, you never
You
know.
never
I
know.
I love the adrenaline rush you get when you find something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
And then as a blogger, the disappointment when you realize I can't actually tell anyone because that'll kill this deal.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Well, and
Yeah.
especially for you, like when back in the day, I mean, there was so much stuff that you did talk about, but then there was stuff that it's like, well, just out of service to the community, I'm not going to talk about this.
Yeah,
But yeah, totally. So anyway, all that to say, fast forward to 2021, and this was in the depth of the pandemic, or right, I mean, not really the depths of the pandemic, but it was still firmly within the pandemic, and we were just coming out
sure.
of it in terms of the wine industry. And I'd been in the wine industry for about 10, 12 years now, and I was kind of like, I don't know if this is really where I want to spend the rest of my life. And without getting into all the reasons why, just, and I owned a winery at that point. I was co-owner of a winery, still am. I was working for a winery, and I just didn't know that this was like where I wanted to be for until I was,
Sure.
but I like that was what I did. That's what I had enmeshed myself pretty deeply into that world. And so it was during Thanksgiving, early start. No, it wouldn't have been Thanksgiving. It probably would have been sometime in October. My wife and I we're driving out to a family get together, and we stopped in a Safeway parking lot, not to buy gift cards. We were just buying something else, but I appreciate you thinking that, Nick.
It was on my mind.
Yeah, it's like, so did you buy 200s or 500s? What were you getting? Um, but we were just talking about it. She said, okay, but so what if you could just not think about money, not think about anything else? What would you do? What would you want to do for a job? And I said, well, probably want to work for Frequent Miler, or write for Frequent Miler, but that would never happen. Like I did a bunch of writing for both wineries for like press releases and marketing copy and all that sort of stuff. It's like I don't know WordPress from a hole in the head. Some might argue I still don't. And um, she's like, well, and so we're just kind of talking. Like, are there other things like that? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. But so literally the next week, Frequent Miler posts they're hiring for an author the next week. That was when I found out that Greg
Timing is
actually was in
everything.
cahoots with Apple and their Siri listening things. Like you, but so
Wow.
and Aaron was like, you got to apply for it. I'm like, yeah, I should apply for it. And then I went to look at the application, and the application wasn't like an application that anybody I ever heard of. It's like a bunch of questions, and it's not like nobody even cares what, like, you could be what your background is. It was all about here, how do you write, how you answer these sorts of questions. And I looked at it and immediately knew this is going to take me a couple hours. And I was busy. I was doing a bunch of stuff. Like, I have no chance of getting this. And Aaron's like, and this is silly. And I said, no, 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 you should do it. Come on, you got to at least do it. So I did it. I sent it in, completely forgot about it. And then we were over Christmas, we were in Maui where her family is. And I was in another Safeway parking lot, again, not buying gift cards. And I completely
Do they
forgot
have
about
other things there
it. I,
at
you know,
Safeway?
they
Just
do.
buying money
They
orders?
have,
Is that what it was?
yeah, they have sparkling water. It's sparkling water and gift cards. That's what they sell.
Okay.
And I got an email from Greg the Frequent Miler saying, "Hey, we had hundreds of applicants, and you're one of the finalists, right?" And I don't even know if you said how many finalists there were, but you're one of the finalists. And I was like, "Holy!" I mean, this is a safe for family podcast, so I said, "Holy something else," but we'll say, "Holy shnikes." And I, texted my wife and said, "You'll never guess. Freaking Meyer wants to interview me. That's crazy." And so I emailed back and said, "Yes." And so we set up an interview for once I got back. I want to say it was like right before New Year's. Interviewed with Nick was not there, which is good because he since said that if he would have been there, there's no way I would have ever gotten hired.
I did not remember that Nick wasn't there at that
Nick,
one.
No, I wasn't.
yeah,
Oh, because were there two interviews with Tim?
no, you were for whatever reason.
I
I
thought it
don't
was
remember.
Steven that wasn't there.
No, I was
Oh
there
no,
for
it
you.
was
I
no,
was
no,
there
no,
for
no. It
you. I
was
know.
Steven that wasn't
Steven
there.
wasn't there.
It
Yeah,
was
I was gonna
Steven
say
that
I was
wasn't there.
definitely at your interview.
No, no, you're right. You're right. It was Steven that wasn't there. But it was Carrie, Nick,
Yeah,
and Greg.
that's right. That is right. Yeah.
Uh, when one of the things that had partially that I think I was really looking for,
Let the
uh, I,
record show, by the way, that the elderly man is the one who remembered that correctly.
Well, I knew I was there. I was like, was there a second interview or something? Cause I'll tell you why I remember I was there. But go ahead. You're done.
why do you remember you were there? Or
Well,
Arrayas is
because
always something that other than wrong.
so when we narrowed down to finalists, right? I mean, we had the different people we were looking at, and I had my expectations as to where I thought everybody would come in, like just based on the applications, kind of where I thought maybe my first or second choice might be based on the applications. And I said before your interview, I said, this is what I think, but I don't know what to think about this Tim guy yet. He's a wild card. He might surprise us during the interview because you had all the information that we needed, and I just didn't know what your personality was going to be like. And then in the interview, it was like mic drop. You did, I mean, you were fantastic, and there was no doubt in my mind that you were going to be the right person for the job. And it was funny because you said something in your application about having good jokes. I don't remember what it was. And
Yeah,
then I read your
I remember that
profile
too.
at the winery you were at that also mentioned telling good jokes. I was like, well, this guy thinks he's funny. Maybe he will be. I don't know. And you were. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, okay, he does tell a good joke.
And for me, this was my first time hiring where the team was part of the hiring process, and it was so important to me because we had built up such a great camaraderie between the four of us. And so it was probably the highest priority thing was to, if we're going to add someone to the team, that they have to fit in with the team. And so it was unfortunate, Stephen couldn't make it to that. But yeah, I remember during the interview, it's like, wow, Tim is just right from the get-go. Even though he might be nervous about an interview, he's fitting in. It just felt totally right.
Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you came to the interview. I didn't mean
Yeah.
to
So,
hijack
well,
your story.
and it's actually very similar. Like one of the reasons why I didn't want to why I didn't want to necessarily running my own winery was seeming less and less attractive as I really like to work as part of a team. That's and the idea of being the sole person where it's just me and everybody else is working for me and not really I'm the one that's kind of wearing all the hats and I'm the one that's making all the decisions. There's something that's attractive about that, but there's also, it's like, but that's not kind of how I want to function. I like to work as part of a team and bounce ideas and like and so part of the thing about frequent miler, what was appealing about frequent miler is it like, oh, this could be a fun team. And that's actually what I remember about that interview as well, is I remember it very quickly feeling less like an interview and more like a conversation.
Yeah.
And we were just sort of hanging out after a little bit, and it wasn't necessary. It didn't feel as like this kind of
Yeah.
stage
Did you do
interview.
anything to prepare in advance? Yeah.
No, I didn't. And
I'm not
that
sure
was
what you could have
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, I don't know that
right,
you could,
and
right? I
that was
mean,
partially I didn't know
yeah.
what I could have done. It's like I
Right.
could go review award charts and stuff, but it's like, well, that's not going to do at this point. At this
Yeah.
point, I know what I know, and I am who I am, and so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
it's either
Exactly.
going to fit or it's not, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well,
No.
yeah, and at that point, you made it to that point. You obviously had the knowledge that we were concerned with. It was really just seeing, how does this fit, and it clearly did. So it
No.
was all you had to do is come and be yourself, and that was it. So yeah, I mean, that was you did a great job with that interview. I remember, and your answers on the application were terrific too. I agree with you that Greg's application when I applied to, I said this on my origin story, that it was the most unique job application I'd ever
No.
filled out. Right, I've never seen an application like one of Greg's applications, and they both times I'm sure, but when I did it and when you did it, it was a long process trying to figure
Yeah.
out the answers. But that helps narrow down and figure out, okay, well, who has the right knowledge base and knows this and that and has like the right perspective on looking at things, because I think it was more about who's thinking about things in the right way than anything else. And we had a lot of great candidates, and you were fantastic. So it was a pretty easy choice, I think, for me.
Nice. Yeah. Steven still regrets. He's like, if I would have been there, I could have done something.
Yeah. He has to take all the abuse from you and there's no
Yeah,
recourse.
yeah, I know,
Yeah.
poor guy. But yeah, so I mean,
So
since then it's been a blast. I started off part time with the idea that this would probably be just a part time addition to the wine stuff, with outside thing. Well, maybe at some point this could actually be a full time gig. And then we were actually just talking about before we started recording this. We were just talking about how long it had been since I started and when I went full time, and it was about a year after. I think I went up, like, I think I started at 10 hours and went up to 20 hours. And then
Mhm.
after a year, went full time. So it's now been a little over 2 years uh, full time. And I think I just recently hit 1,400 or 1,300 blog posts or something like that. So
Oh, wow.
it's
Nice.
it's like it's kind of
incredible.
fun to look back and it's like, wow, there's like a significant chunk of the total output that now it's been a while. It's like it doesn't
For
feel like
sure.
it's been that long, but it's been a while.
Right, right. And we've had a blast since hiring you. So unfortunately now I have to give you your termination notice and
Yeah, yeah.
no,
Well,
I got
but
it was a good run.
but no, that obviously was just a joke. But this is serious. On coffee breaks, we're supposed to keep to 20 minutes. We've gone well over that. We've promised people their money back. It's on you, Tim, to
coming
give
out of your
everybody their
check,
money
Tim.
back.
Coming out of your check.
Totally.
Wait, I have one other question for you, Tim. Now that you've been doing this for as long as you have, what do you get more excited about? Earning points or redeeming points?
Oh, that's a good question. It's which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, it's still redeeming. And I would say the reason why I hesitate is because earning points happen so much more. I mean, it's so much more. I shouldn't say so much more. It's so much more frequent
Mhm.
because I'm constantly earning points. I'm constantly thinking about how to earn points, and I'm continue to get better at it. I'm better at earning points now than I was 5 years ago. And each time I learn something, and each time it's fun and that's exciting. And so there's more frequent adrenaline hits that come with the redeeming or the earning. However, redeeming is still, that's the crack for me. When we were just, going in with this trip, we just went to Taiwan and Japan and Okinawa, like we just had a blast. It was incredible. And the idea that we were able to stay in these places and fly to these places and do it all in a way that allowed us to like maximally enjoy our time was, I mean, it's just a blast. So I would say that that's a tough question because of that, but I would say it's still probably the redeeming because of what it enables us to do, and it's the actual experience of that.
Agreed. Agreed. Well,
And not, and honestly, and I think too, just to do that for in terms of what we do here, probably the most gratifying emails that I read are when I hear about what people are able to do with the points and miles that they've earned. And the honeymoons and
Hmm.
the anniversaries and the first trip with the kids, or whatever it is, just stuff that people didn't ever think this would ever be a part of their lives. And they've learned how to do it, and now they've done it. And so I would say that too, the redeeming part, that's like the best part of this job. I mean, outside of hanging out with the team, that's the best part of this job.
Cheers to that. Cheers to that. Well, I just cost you an extra 10% there for the last
Geez.
couple of minutes.
Ah,
So
Oh, heck, let's give people double their money back.
double their
let's
money
do.
back.
It's
The
Tim's
push.
money.
Let's fipple it. Let's do a fipple
Fipple
discount.
it. We'll fipple it. There you go. All right. Thanks so much, Tim. This was great. I really enjoyed listening to your origin story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was fun hanging out with you guys.